Before the first damaging punch lands, David Benavidez has usually claimed the geography of the exchange with his lead hand. Light taps on a glove, a wrist, a shoulder, or a forehead look harmless in isolation, yet each touch starts bending the posture in front of him. Many pressure fighters move their feet first and trust their hands to catch up, but Benavidez often reverses that order and wins the lane with contact before stepping through it. That small sequencing choice decides more than it seems, because once a stance narrows or a shoulder line turns, the next trade is already tilted. When opponents circle, he rarely chases in straight lines. Instead, he pins the nadir side with the lead hand, pivots in short arcs, and turns open ring into a corridor with one exit fading by the second. Ropes become a pressure point before they become a location. Composure starts leaking there, long before the most dramatic damage appears. As soon as a fighter begins punching on David Benavidez's timing instead of his own rhythm, combinations arrive in windows Benavidez built one beat earlier. His jab is often less a point-scoring weapon than a forced question with no comfortable answer. Swat it, slip inside it, or shell behind it, and every response commits the body to a track he can read. When the lead hand gets slapped down, Benavidez drives through center before the guard can reassemble. If a defender slips inward, a half-step shift creates room for a compact right hand or right uppercut over the lead shoulder. Should the shell lock in place, he works around elbows and gloves in layers until impact, not fear, creates the opening. What looks sudden on fight night is usually prepared through fast hand fighting that disappears at full speed. Against slick movers, that craft becomes even clearer, because his lead hand measures distance while muting counters. He checks the lead glove, occupies the shoulder line, and interferes just enough with the lead eye sight picture. By the time the rear hand travels, the read is late, the block climbs high, and that high block invites punishment downstairs. Head-to-body rhythm is where Benavidez's volume stops being mere activity and starts becoming sustained damage. A right to the chest, a left hook upstairs, another right behind it, then a shovel hook to the ribs can sound like random output from the crowd. Inside the mechanics, it is geometry solved at speed, with position dictating punch order more than impulse. Frame stabilizes target, feet preserve angle, and shots stack faster than the brain can separate them. Watch David Benavidez's lead foot during those stretches, and almost no movement is wasted. Rarely square for long, he edges outside just enough to free the rear shoulder without sacrificing balance. Range closes with a drift rather than a leap, which keeps him available to continue while shrinking the counter window. That is why surviving the first burst can mislead the man across from him. Many fighters try to answer instantly, and Benavidez is still set in front of them with both hands loaded in launch position. His stoppages feel like avalanches because each wave attacks a different layer of defense. One series breaks posture and steals clean vision. Another compromises balance, often off the same post or frame that started the sequence. A third arrives when feet go parallel near the ropes, and that is when referees stop seeing resistance and start seeing danger. None of this is empty touching or decorative front-hand work. David Benavidez uses the frame to reduce decision time for the fighter in front of him. Less time means fewer defensive choices, fewer choices create patterns, and predictable patterns feed his punch count. Even misses can produce control, because his lead hand often stays connected and decides which shoulder moves first. A conditioning bill hides in this method that raw punch totals do not fully capture. Constant hand fighting makes opponents work between exchanges, and that extra labor drains the guard earlier than expected. By the middle rounds, tiny battles at wrist and forehead level become visible damage on face and body. Once a fighter stops contesting the frame and simply accepts it, Benavidez enters his most dangerous phase. At that point, combinations are no longer negotiated in open play. They are imposed. Calling David Benavidez a volume machine captures only the loudest layer of the story. Underneath sits a disciplined system of lead-hand command that manufactures clean targets in crowded space. He is not merely throwing more than opponents throw. He is arranging the fight so that when he throws, the opponent is fixed in front of him, laid on the read, and trapped between bad choices. Cover up and get split. Fire back and get intercepted. Either way, the frame already did the hardest work, and the finish becomes selection rather than chance. When an opponent chooses to punch his way off the line, Benavidez is often waiting for that choice before it is fully formed. A small lie invites urgency, usually a harmless touch that suggests daylight where a trap is already set. You see the feint to the forehead, the slight withdrawal, the thin pocket of space, and then the counter comes, because it feels correct. What the other fighter misses is the preparation underneath, rear heel loaded, head just outside scent, lead shoulder, ready to absorb impact. Return fire either skims past or dies on glove and forearm, and Benavidez answers before the counterhand retracts. That is why his combinations look destructive from beat one, because they land while balance is compromised and posture is unfinished. A fighter can survive being stretched for a moment. He can survive getting squared once. He can survive turning at the wrong time. Against David Benavidez, Those errors often arrive together, and defense starts unraveling in layers. One of his sharpest habits is opening finishing runs with a body shot instead of a headline punch upstairs. Straight right to the chest, left hook to the liver line, short uppercut under the elbows, each choice meant to arrest movement more than impress the crowd. Those punches are not detours. They are clamps on the hips. When hips stall, the exit step disappears and the head stays in range longer than expected. Then Benavidez changes floors without hesitation, going high with straights, curving around the guard, then firing back through center. Eyes are forced to track too many levels, while feet can no longer buy the inches needed to reset distance. That split between visual overload and reduced mobility is where panic begins. Against David Benavidez, panic rarely starts as dramatic collapse. It begins as tiny betrayals of form. A guard reaching beyond its frame. A pullback with weight hanging over the rear hip. A clinch attempted from too far out. His lead hand reads each mistake like a switch clicking on. If the guard extends, he pins or swats and sends a straight shot through the lane that opens. If the pullback appears, he walks in behind the jab and drops the right hand over the top before posture rebuilds. If the clinch comes early, he frames the biceps, turns the shoulder line, and punches in transition while the tie-up is still forming. In between punching is a major reason his pressure feels absolute. Many high-output fighters need clean phases, offense now, reset next, then offense again. David Benavidez treats every phase as contested space. At the ropes, in half clinches, and on messy breaks, he keeps hand fighting for first touch and first angle. Even when a shot cannot land cleanly, he is reclaiming wrist control, restoring head position, and denying a neutral restart. Round by round, those denials become suffocation that looks technical before it looks violent. Corners can call for smart answers, circle left, jab smutters, meet him down the middle. Advice is correct on paper. Problem is that Benavidez keeps shrinking timing windows until opponents are living on half beats instead of full decisions. At that speed, fighters stop choosing the best option and start choosing the fastest one. Fast usually becomes obvious. Obvious is where his finishing instincts turn clinical. He conditions reactions on one side, then flips the sequence to the side he has quietly opened all round. Two right hands to force a high shell, then a left hook buried downstairs. Hooks to the body until elbows sink, then a straight right splitting the gloves. Patterns change by opponent, but the structure stays ruthless. Touch gathers data. Frame controls alignment. Feet get fixed. A rushed answer is forced. That answer is punished before it can evolve. When the stoppage comes, people often call it simple overwhelm, and from a distance that sounds fair. Inside the mechanics, it looks like system failure built one compromised decision at a time. Every lost lead hand exchange steals a fraction of stance. Every broken stance steals vision. Every blind reaction creates the next target. By late rounds, the opponent is not only hurt against David Benavidez, he is stripped of organized responses. That is the true finishing window Benavidez constructs, not luck and not one miracle punch, but an environment where recovery runs slower than damage. Speed and output are obvious edges, the part the arena can hear. The deeper edge is command, where he dictates where the head can travel, when shoulders can turn, and which hand can safely leave home. Once command is in place, the final barrage feels less like chaos and more like an outcome written from his first lead hand touch. The hardest thing to endure in a David Benavidez fight is not only pace, power, or size at close range. It is the layering of all three until each exchange feels like an alarm demanding an instant answer. Benavidez does not need perfect offenses in every pocket to own a round. He only needs to trigger the same defensive panic often enough that the other man starts borrowing against his own fundamentals. First comes retreat to avoid the straight right. Then the stance widens to brace for impact. Then the lead hand reaches to reclaim distance, and that reach is where David Benavidez takes the map. He swats or pins the arm, steps the lead foot outside, and turns the torso just enough that return shots travel across him instead of through him. That subtle redirection creates a sliver of time, and at elite speed, a sliver is enough. You will see his right hand split a high guard that looked disciplined seconds earlier. The opening is rarely accidental. His frame already lifted one elbow, froze the opposite side, and delayed the reset of both hands together. Then comes the left hook, compact and efficient, purposeful rather than desperate. Sometimes it bites the seam of the gloves. Sometimes it clips the ear and turns the head. Once the head turns, the body reacts late. Once the body is late, the next right hand lands before full recognition arrives. That is where David Benavidez separates from pressure fighters who mistake activity for purpose. Output is high, but it is organized around constraints he already imposed. Shoulder pinned, feet crowded, vision interrupted, counterhand occupied. Even during clinch attempts, Benavidez keeps working the geometry. He steers with the lead forearm, nudges a half step offline, keeps hips free, and punches on release before the ring can reset. That detail is ruthless because a clean reset equals recovery time. Benavidez treats recovery time like stolen property and takes it back immediately. He maintains touch contact, reclaims the lane, and restarts the sequence before stance discipline can rebuild. Against southpaws, the picture changes, but the logic stays intact. The contest shifts toward outside foot position and lead shoulder control, and David Benavidez keeps probing until the rear hand corridor appears. Jab to the chest, post on the biceps, drag the guard just enough, then thread a straight right or right uppercut between the gloves. If the southpaw rolls under and searches for an exit, Benavidez rarely overchases. He catches the near shoulder, pivots in balance, and places hooks where the head is moving, not where it used to be. By the championship rounds, physical damage is obvious, but tactical damage is often worse. Opponents begin reacting to the frame before it arrives. They shell early on feints and surrender sightlines to avoid contact that has not been thrown yet. That is a quiet turning point in a David Benavidez performance. When a fighter starts defending threats that are not there, the real punches arrive with cleaner authority. When those shots land, Benavidez does not pause to admire them. He changes levels in sequence, head to body to head, without sacrificing balance or intent. A hurt fighter can guess one target. He still can read 3 targets in rhythm. Benavidez's finishing work is savage because it stays disciplined under fire. Close enough to smother desperate counters, far enough to keep leverage, and constantly connected with the lead hand, he rarely lets alignment escape for long. No theatrical reset follows big moments. No drift away appears for celebration. No emotional sprint breaks structure. Pressure is built from contact, contact is converted into angle, and angle is converted into impact. That is why endings in David Benavidez fights often feel inevitable before they feel sudden. By the time a referee intervenes, the stoppage is rarely born from one heroic swing. It has been engineered through dozens of small lead hand victories that remove defensive options one by one. In that sense, Benavidez is more than a finisher with heavy hands. He is a positional punisher who takes the front hand, then the shoulder behind it, then the feet beneath everything else. Only after that does David Benavidez cash out with combinations that feel overwhelming because they were designed to be unavoidable. Violence is what the crowd sees. Control is why it happens. In the ringcraft of David Benavidez, command starts with the lead hand and ends with nowhere left to go. Most opponents do not break from one punch. They break when Benavidez makes several problems arrive in the same second. Position is claimed with touch, exits are erased with feet, and fire comes before the defender decides which emergency matters most. From outside the ropes, that reads as relentless pressure. Inside the exchange, it is sequencing measured in half beats. Post on a shoulder to stall the turn, nudge the guard to raise elbows, step outside, then drive the right hand through the lane just created. Even when that right hand thuds into forearms, useful work is still done. The shell compresses, breath gets stolen, and arms stay pinned long enough for the left hook to wrap the edge. That is why his combinations feel heavy before the clean headshot appears. First impact shapes the target. Second impact punishes the shape. Third impact arrives while correction is still late. Against taller men, David Benavidez becomes especially methodical. He does not begin by reaching for the head the way opponents expect. He marks high to hold attention, then stabs chest and sternum where length offers little protection and recoil is slower. A right hand to the chest rarely makes highlight reels, but it disrupts the metronome of long-range boxing. Once rhythm is interrupted, the upstairs hook no longer feels isolated. It feels inevitable. Experienced boxers often try the textbook exit, pivot off the lead side, and punch while turning. Benavidez rarely allows a clean break. He reframes with the lead forearm, compact and immediate, so contact never fully disappears. Rather than chasing a body spinning away, he rotates with it and keeps the exchange at his preferred distance. Now the opponent is turning without separation, feet crossing, balance self-negotiating. That is where Benavidez's short uppercuts become cruel. He is not loading like a single-shot gambler. He is lifting from inches away, splitting gloves, while the defender is still completing the escape step. When those uppercuts start threading through, panic decisions become visible. Some fighters lock into a tighter shell and surrender ground. Some reach to clinch over the top. Some throw hurried counters without room to extend. Every choice gives David Benavidez another clean read. If the guard clamps down, he drills body until elbows drop, then snaps immediately upstairs. If hands reach to tie up, he posts on biceps and punches through seams before the clinch can settle. If counters get wide, he beats arc with line and shoots straight through center. This is why his finishing stretches do not look like ordinary flurries. Most flurries burn out on effort. A Benavidez surge renews itself through touch. Lead hand placed, orientation regained, lane confirmed, then detonation again before the guard reorganizes. You might see 4 or 5 shots, a brief post, then another burst that arrives unfairly early. That second burst is often what brings referees closer, not because it is louder, because the opponent has stopped making purposeful choices. Stance narrows. Head stays on the same track. Return fire fades from threat to gesture. Those signs are only surface evidence. The break usually started rounds earlier in quiet hand fights at glove, wrist, and forearm. David Benavidez steals moments there, and stolen moments become stolen space. Stolen space becomes reduced options. Reduced options become predictability. Predictability is where his cruelty sharpens, because anticipation short-ends the distance between seeing and throwing. Shortened distance, he does not lunge for a heroic finish. Feet stay under him, shoulders stay disciplined, and the lead hand stays ready to steady the picture again. That is why his stoppages feel inevitable before they become official. Damage is visible, but inevitability comes from structure. By the time collapse is obvious, the map has already been drawn by Benavidez. A brave fighter can still be trapped on that map. A seasoned fighter can still be made repetitive on that map. When David Benavidez has a man repeating answers, combinations are no longer probes searching for openings. They become confirmations thrown into windows he already built, framed, and claimed. Each attempt to escape left leaves a touch on the lead side. Each attempt to pull straight back invites a right hand that arrives before posture resets. Each hurried clinch becomes another chance for Benavidez to punch through transition and deny rest. That cycle is why his pressure feels less like a sprint and more like a system that keeps rebooting in his favor. He does not need every shot to land cleanly to win the minute. He needs each exchange to end with better position than where he started. From there, the cumulative effect is merciless. A fighter begins by defending punches. Then he starts defending possibilities. Soon he is defending ghosts, and that is when real damage lands with authority. Benavidez stays composed in that phase because composure is part of the weapon. Frame stays honest, feet stay quiet, and selection follows structure. No wasted flourish appears. No reckless chase appears. No break from the logic that got him there appears. Inside that logic, David Benavidez turns pressure into architecture. He defines where the fight can happen. He defines how fast decisions must be made. He defines which mistakes get punished first. By the late rounds, many opponents are not only physically hurt, they are strategically emptied. No clean angle to turn remains. No free lane to punch through remains. No rhythm left that still belongs to them remains. In that emptied space, Benavidez does what elite finishers do. He stays balanced, keeps touch contact, and throws the combinations position demands. Resistance becomes survival. Survival becomes intervention. Intervention in a David Benavidez fight is usually the final proof that control landed first and violence merely finished the sentence.